silence creates more distance than rejection. That is one of the hardest truths a super empath eventually learns when dealing with an avoidant. Most people believe relationships fall apart because there is not enough love. But in many cases, the real problem is not a lack of love at all. It is a lack of understanding. A super empath's biggest mistake is not caring too much, giving too much, or loving too deeply. The mistake is revealing too much of their inner world before the relationship is emotionally safe enough to hold it. What feels like honesty to an empath can sometimes feel like pressure to an avoidant. What feels like vulnerability can feel overwhelming. What feels like closeness can unexpectedly create distance. This is why so many empaths find themselves confused. They give their heart openly, they explain their feelings clearly, they try to create deeper connection. Yet the more they reveal, the more the avoidant seems to pull away. The more they seek understanding, the more silence they receive. And over time, they begin asking themselves a painful question: why does my love seem to push away the very person I care about the most? The answer is far more complex than most people realize. Avoidants do not process emotional intimacy the same way many empaths do. In fact, some of the things that naturally create closeness in other relationships can trigger discomfort, pressure, and withdrawal in an avoidant dynamic. This hidden pattern often remains invisible until significant emotional damage has already been done. What makes this even more fascinating is that many super empaths unknowingly reveal the exact things that weaken their position, drain their emotional power, and reduce the respect they receive in return. These are not obvious mistakes. They often come from kindness, patience, compassion, and a genuine desire to build a stronger connection. Yet these good intentions can sometimes produce the opposite result. In this video, you will discover the 5 things a super empath should never openly reveal to an avoidant if they want to protect their peace, maintain their value, and preserve their emotional strength. You will learn why certain conversations create distance instead of closeness, why some forms of vulnerability can backfire, and why the strongest empaths are often the ones who know what to share and what to keep private. You will also uncover several psychological truths that most relationship advice completely overlooks. Some of these insights may challenge what you currently believe about love, honesty, and emotional connection. Most importantly, stay with us until the very end, because the final lesson ties everything together and reveals the hidden shift that transforms an empath from emotionally exhausted to emotionally powerful. If you are tired of feeling confused by avoidant behavior, if you want to understand the deeper psychology behind these patterns, and if you want to protect your heart without losing your kindness, then this video is for you. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy deep insights into psychology, relationships, attachment styles, and personal growth, make sure to subscribe and join our community for more powerful content just like this. The first thing a super empath must learn to hide from an avoidant is their fear of losing them. This fear is often invisible at first. It does not always appear as desperation. It does not always sound dramatic. In fact, many empaths never say the words out loud, but the fear still finds ways to reveal itself. It appears in the extra text message that did not need to be sent. It appears in the constant checking for signs of change. It appears in the need for reassurance after every period of distance. It appears in the silent panic that rises whenever the avoidant becomes quiet, distracted, or emotionally unavailable. The empath may look calm on the outside, but inside, they are carrying a heavy emotional burden. They are constantly trying to protect the connection from breaking. The problem is that avoidants often sense this emotional dependence long before it is spoken. They notice when someone is becoming emotionally centered around them. They notice when their actions begin to control another person's emotional state. And instead of feeling closer, they often feel trapped. This is one of the least understood dynamics between empaths and avoidants. Most people assume that if someone knows they are deeply loved, they will naturally move closer. But avoidants often experience relationships differently. When they begin to feel responsible for someone else's emotional stability, they can become uncomfortable. What feels like devotion to an empath can feel like pressure to an avoidant. What feels like love can feel like obligation. The avoidant starts feeling that every decision they make carries emotional consequences. If they take space, the empath becomes anxious. If they pull back, the empath becomes worried. If they need independence, the empath becomes afraid. Over time, the avoidant begins associating closeness with responsibility rather than freedom. That is when distance starts to grow. Many super empaths accidentally communicate messages they never intended to send. They may never directly say, "I need you," yet their behavior quietly communicates it. They may never say, "I can't lose you," yet their reactions reveal it. They may never say, "You are everything to me," yet their entire emotional world begins revolving around one person. This creates a hidden imbalance. The avoidant becomes the emotional center of the relationship, while the empath slowly loses their own center. The more this happens, the more power shifts away from the empath. Not because the avoidant is trying to gain control, but because emotional dependence naturally creates pressure. People are often attracted to connection, but they rarely enjoy carrying responsibility for another person's emotional survival. The painful part is that the empath usually has good intentions. They are not trying to manipulate anyone. They are not trying to create guilt. They simply love deeply. They care deeply. They invest deeply. Their hearts naturally move toward connection. They believe relationships grow through openness, vulnerability, and emotional honesty. In many situations, that belief is true, but when dealing with an avoidant, timing matters. Emotional intensity matters. Balance matters. If vulnerability turns into emotional dependence, the relationship begins to feel heavy instead of safe. This creates a cycle that many empaths know all too well. The empath fears losing the avoidant. Because of that fear, they seek more connection. The avoidant senses the increased emotional pressure and pulls away. The distance triggers even more anxiety inside the empath. The empath then reaches out more often, explains more feelings, and seeks more reassurance. The avoidant feels even more overwhelmed and withdraws further. Neither person intended for this cycle to happen, yet both become trapped inside it. The empath feels abandoned. The avoidant feels pressured. Both people suffer. What makes this cycle especially dangerous is that it slowly changes how the empath sees themselves. Instead of focusing on their own happiness, goals, and emotional growth, they begin monitoring the relationship constantly. Their mood rises and falls based on the avoidance behavior. A text message creates relief. A delayed response creates anxiety. A warm interaction creates hope. A distant interaction creates fear. Without realizing it, the empath hands over control of their emotional world. Their peace becomes dependent on another person's choices. This is why the fear of losing someone is so powerful. It does not just affect the relationship. It affects the relationship you have with yourself. The strongest thing a super empath can do is learn to feel fear without acting from fear. Fear is normal. Fear does not make someone weak. Everyone fears loss at some point. Everyone fears rejection at some point. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to stop making another person responsible for managing it. Emotional stability is an inside job. No partner can permanently remove insecurity. No relationship can permanently eliminate fear. The moment an empath understands this, they begin reclaiming their power. Another hidden truth is that many empaths secretly believe their patience will eventually transform the avoidant. They tell themselves that enough love will break through every wall, enough understanding will heal every wound, enough kindness will create emotional openness. This belief often comes from a beautiful place. Empaths see potential where others see problems. They see pain behind difficult behavior. They see wounded parts that need healing. They see possibilities that others miss. This ability is one of their greatest strengths, but it can also become one of their greatest weaknesses. Many super empaths enter relationships with an invisible project. They do not realize they are doing it. They convince themselves they are simply being supportive. Yet deep inside, they are waiting for change. They are waiting for the avoidant to become more emotionally available. They are waiting for deeper communication. They are waiting for greater consistency. They are waiting for vulnerability that may never arrive. Every small improvement becomes evidence that transformation is coming. Every emotional breakthrough becomes proof that their patience is working. They become attached not only to the person in front of them, but also to the future version they hope that person will become. The problem is that relationships cannot survive on potential alone. Potential is not reality. Hope is not reality. Possibility is not reality. An avoidant may grow, they may heal, they may become more emotionally available over time. But growth only happens when the individual chooses it for themselves. It cannot be forced through love. It cannot be purchased with sacrifice. It cannot be earned through endless patience. The empath often spends years waiting for a future that exists only in their imagination. Avoidants are often more aware of these expectations than people realize. Even when the empath never speaks about them directly, the expectations can still be felt. The avoidant senses that they are being measured against an ideal version of themselves. They sense disappointment when they fail to meet that expectation. They sense pressure to become someone different. To the empath, this may feel like support. To the avoidant, it may feel like judgment. It may feel like control. It may feel like a constant reminder that who they are today is not enough. This creates another hidden distance. The avoidant feels accepted conditionally rather than completely. The empath believes they are helping. The avoidant feels criticized. Neither side fully understands what is happening. The empath grows frustrated because progress feels slow. The avoidant grows defensive because expectations feel overwhelming. Slowly, resentment begins forming on both sides. One of the hardest lessons for a super empath is accepting reality before potential. This does not mean abandoning hope. It means seeing clearly. It means evaluating people based on who they consistently are rather than who they might become one day. It means accepting the truth in front of you instead of becoming emotionally attached to a future possibility. The moment an empath stops trying to rescue, fix, heal, or transform another person, they begin seeing the relationship more honestly. They stop carrying responsibility that never belonged to them in the first place. The third thing a super empath must be careful about revealing is how quickly they forgive. Forgiveness is one of the most beautiful qualities an empath possesses. They understand pain deeply. They understand trauma deeply. They understand human weakness deeply. Because of this, they often forgive people long before others would. They see the reasons behind mistakes. They see the childhood wounds behind unhealthy behavior. They see the fear beneath anger. They see the insecurity beneath distance. Their compassion allows them to look beyond actions and understand motives. But compassion without boundaries can become self-destruction. Many super empaths forgive so quickly that consequences disappear. They excuse behavior that should have been addressed. They tolerate patterns that should have been challenged. They offer understanding when accountability is needed. Each time this happens, a dangerous message is sent. The message is not spoken out loud. It is communicated through actions. The message says, no matter what happens, I will stay. At first, this may sound loving, but over time, it can weaken the foundation of respect. People naturally value what requires responsibility. When accountability disappears, relationships become unbalanced. The avoidant may begin assuming that every mistake will eventually be forgiven, every period of withdrawal will eventually be accepted, every broken promise will eventually be overlooked. This does not happen because they are intentionally taking advantage. It happens because human behavior adapts to what is repeatedly tolerated. Many empaths mistake forgiveness for trust. These are not the same thing. Forgiveness is an internal process. Trust is something that must be rebuilt through actions. A super empath can forgive someone and still require change. They can understand someone's pain and still enforce boundaries. They can show compassion while maintaining standards. These things are not opposites, they are partners. One of the biggest reasons respect decreases in certain relationships is not because the empath loves too much. It is because they remove all consequences too quickly. They forgive before accountability appears. They reconnect before trust is restored. They offer access before change is demonstrated. Over time, this teaches others that apologies matter more than actions. The strongest empaths eventually learn a different approach. They still forgive, they still care, they still understand, but they stop handing out unlimited chances. They stop confusing empathy with self-sacrifice. They stop rewarding behavior that repeatedly hurts them. They recognize that compassion and boundaries can exist together. They understand that kindness does not require abandoning self-respect. They realize that protecting their heart is not selfish, it is necessary. The fourth thing a super empath must learn to protect is the full depth of their emotional pain. This may sound surprising because empaths are often taught that vulnerability is always the answer. They are told that openness creates intimacy. They are told that sharing feelings builds connection. In many healthy relationships, this is true. Emotional honesty is important. Vulnerability allows two people to understand each other on a deeper level. It creates trust. It creates closeness. It allows walls to come down. But what many empaths do not realize is that vulnerability and emotional flooding are not the same thing. There is a difference between expressing feelings and unloading every wound onto someone who is not emotionally equipped to handle it. This difference becomes especially important when dealing with an avoidant. Empaths often carry years of emotional pain inside them. They carry memories of rejection. They carry disappointments from previous relationships. They carry childhood wounds. They carry moments when they felt abandoned, misunderstood, ignored, or unseen. Because they feel emotions so deeply, these experiences leave lasting marks. When they finally find someone they care about, they naturally want to be known. They want to be understood. They want someone to see the parts of themselves they usually keep hidden from the world. This desire is completely natural. Every human being wants connection. Every human being wants acceptance. The problem begins when the empath believes that complete emotional exposure will automatically create that connection. Many super empaths think that if they explain everything clearly enough, the avoidant will finally understand them. They believe that if they reveal every fear, every hurt, every insecurity, and every emotional struggle, the avoidant will suddenly become more compassionate, more attentive, and more emotionally available. They hope that deeper vulnerability will create deeper intimacy. Sometimes this works with emotionally secure people, but avoidants often process emotional intensity very differently. When an avoidant is exposed to a large amount of emotional information all at once, they can become overwhelmed. It is not always because they do not care. It is not always because they are cold or heartless. Often they simply do not know what to do with the emotional weight being placed in front of them. They may feel responsible for fixing problems they do not understand how to fix. They may feel pressure to respond perfectly. They may feel trapped by emotions that seem too intense for them to handle. Instead of moving closer, they move away. Instead of engaging, they shut down. Instead of providing comfort, they withdraw into silence. This reaction can be devastating for an empath. They finally gather the courage to reveal their deepest feelings. They expose the parts of themselves they usually protect. They hope the relationship will become stronger. Then the avoidant creates distance. The empath interprets this as rejection. They believe their vulnerability pushed the other person away because they were too emotional or too broken. In reality, the avoidant may simply feel overwhelmed and helpless. One of the hidden truths about avoidance is that many struggle with emotions they cannot easily control. Strong emotional situations often trigger discomfort because they were never taught how to navigate them. Some learned very early in life that emotions were dangerous, inconvenient, or unacceptable. Some learned to survive by becoming self-reliant. Some learn to disconnect from emotional needs rather than express them. As adults, they often carry these patterns into relationships. When someone presents intense emotional pain, they may not know how to respond in a healthy way. This creates a painful misunderstanding. The empath thinks if they cared, they would move closer. The avoidant thinks, I don't know how to handle this. Both people end up feeling disconnected. The empath feels abandoned. The avoidant feels overwhelmed. Neither person feels understood. Another mistake many empaths make is turning every emotional experience into a relationship discussion. Every fear becomes a conversation. Every insecurity becomes a conversation. Every disappointment becomes a conversation. Every moment of anxiety becomes a conversation. Over time, the relationship begins revolving around emotional processing rather than connection. The avoidant starts associating communication with pressure. They begin expecting every interaction to become emotionally heavy. This anticipation alone can cause them to withdraw before conversations even begin. A super empath must understand that not every emotion needs to be shared immediately. Not every feeling requires external validation. Some emotions need reflection before expression. Some wounds need personal healing before relationship discussion. Emotional maturity is not about suppressing feelings. It is about understanding which feelings need attention, which need patience, and which need time. This does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable. It does not mean pretending everything is fine. It does not mean hiding pain forever. It simply means learning emotional balance. It means sharing feelings without making another person responsible for carrying all of them. It means expressing needs without expecting someone else to become your emotional caretaker. It snorts means understanding that even healthy relationships require personal responsibility. One of the strongest forms of emotional power is knowing how to regulate yourself before seeking reassurance from others. When a super empath develops this skill, everything begins to change. They stop chasing emotional rescue. They stop seeking constant validation. They stop viewing every uncomfortable feeling as a relationship emergency. Instead, they develop inner stability. They learn to hold space for their own emotions first. This creates a completely different dynamic with avoidance because the relationship becomes less emotionally overwhelming and more emotionally sustainable. The fifth thing a super empath must learn to hide is their inner hope that the avoidant will eventually choose them. This hope often survives long after logic says it should disappear. It survives mixed signals. It survives inconsistency. It survives periods of distance. It survives broken promises. It survives emotional confusion. No matter how many times reality provides warning signs, the empath keeps a small flame alive inside their heart. This hope rarely appears as fantasy. It often feels reasonable. The empath remembers moments when the avoidant seemed caring. They remember moments of vulnerability. They remember affectionate conversations. They remember promises about the future. They remember glimpses of emotional connection that felt real. These memories become evidence that something deeper is possible. The empath begins focusing on what could happen rather than what is happening. The human mind naturally searches for patterns. When an avoidant provides occasional affection mixed with distance, the empath often becomes attached to the moments of connection. They replay them repeatedly. They analyze them. They assign meaning to them. They convince themselves that these moments reveal the avoidant's true feelings. Meanwhile, the inconsistent behavior surrounding those moments gets ignored or minimized. This is where hope becomes dangerous. Hope itself is not the problem. Hope is beautiful. Hope allows people to keep moving forward. Hope helps people survive difficult seasons. But hope becomes harmful when it replaces reality. It becomes harmful when it convinces someone to accept less than they deserve. It becomes harmful when it keeps someone emotionally invested in a relationship that provides very little stability. Many super empaths secretly spend years waiting for consistency. They wait for the avoidant to become certain. They wait for the avoidant to finally choose the relationship completely. During this waiting period, they continue investing emotional energy. They continue making sacrifices. They continue lowering expectations. They continue explaining, understanding, forgiving, and hoping. The avoidant becomes the center of their emotional future. This creates emotional dependency. Dependency does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks quiet. Sometimes it appears as patience. Sometimes it appears as loyalty. Sometimes it appears as understanding. But underneath these behaviors is a growing attachment to an outcome. The empath begins believing their happiness depends on being chosen. Their peace depends on receiving commitment. Their future depends on the avoidant finally becoming what they hoped for. The moment this happens, boundaries begin weakening. Boundaries are difficult to maintain when hope becomes stronger than self-respect. Standards become flexible, excuses become easier, red flags become easier to ignore. The empath starts negotiating with themselves. They tell themselves to wait a little longer, to be a little more patient, to give one more chance, to trust one more promise. Months pass. Sometimes years pass. The relationship remains stuck in the same cycle. One of the most powerful lessons a super empath can learn is that standards must be louder than hope. Standards create clarity. Standards create direction. Standards protect emotional health. Hope should never be allowed to silence reality. If someone's actions consistently fail to match their words, reality matters more than potential. If someone's behavior repeatedly creates confusion, reality matters more than hope. A super empath becomes powerful when they stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing themselves. This shift changes everything. Instead of asking whether the avoidant will commit, they ask whether the relationship is meeting their needs. Instead of asking whether the avoidant will change, they ask whether they are accepting behavior that damages their well-being. Instead of focusing on what they might receive someday, they focus on what is actually being offered today. This leads to the final shift that separates emotionally exhausted empaths from emotionally empowered ones. The goal was never to hide things in order to manipulate anyone. It was never about creating mystery. It was never about playing games. It was never about controlling another person's emotions. The real goal is protecting your energy. A super empath must keep their self-respect. They must keep their independence. They must keep their boundaries. They must keep their identity outside the relationship. They must keep their emotional balance even when feelings become intense. Many empaths lose themselves because they become so focused on understanding others that they forget to protect themselves. They become experts at reading emotions. They become experts at offering compassion. They become experts at supporting people through pain. Yet they rarely give themselves the same care. A healthy relationship does not require one person to carry all the emotional weight. It does not require one person to constantly adapt while the other remains unchanged. It does not require endless sacrifice. It does not require abandoning personal needs in order to preserve connection. The healthiest relationships happen when two people freely choose each other. Both people contribute. Both people communicate. Both people take responsibility for their own growth. Both people respect each other's boundaries. Both people maintain their individuality while building something together. When a super empath learns this, they stop chasing validation. They stop proving their worth. They stop over-explaining their value. They stop carrying relationships that require two people. Instead, they begin protecting their peace, honoring their standards, and investing their energy where it is truly appreciated. As we come to the end of this video, take a moment to reflect on these 5 powerful lessons. A super empath must learn to stop revealing their fear of losing someone. They must stop carrying the hidden mission of changing someone who is not ready to change. They must be careful not to give instant forgiveness without accountability. They must learn the difference between healthy vulnerability and emotional flooding. And they must stop allowing hope to become stronger than their boundaries. These lessons are not about becoming cold. They are not about playing games. They are not about hiding your true self. They are about protecting your emotional energy and preserving your self-respect. Many empaths spend years believing that loving harder will solve every problem. They give more time, more patience, more understanding, more chances. Yet, they often discover that the more they abandon themselves, the more disconnected they feel from the very relationship they are trying to save. The truth is that a super empath is not powerful because they love deeply. Many people love deeply. A super empath becomes powerful when they stop abandoning themselves in the process. Their power comes from knowing when to give and when to step back. Their power comes from keeping their identity, their peace, and their standards intact. Their power comes from understanding that real love should never require the destruction of self-respect. The moment you stop chasing validation, you start attracting respect. The moment you stop proving your worth, you begin recognizing your worth. The moment you stop making someone's responsible for your happiness, you become emotionally free. And when respect, self-worth, and emotional balance come together, you create the foundation for the kind of love that is healthy, mutual, and real. Remember this: the right person will not require you to shrink yourself to keep them comfortable. The right person will not expect you to sacrifice your boundaries to earn their affection. And the right relationship will never force you to choose between loving someone else and loving yourself. If this video helped you see your situation from a new perspective, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more deep insights into psychology, relationships, attachment styles, and personal growth. Also, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who may need to hear this message today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.